I do care about finances because I have a family that I need to support, and I have things that I like, obviously. But ultimately, you get up to a certain level where financially it just doesn't do it for you anymore. And for me, it was the peace of mind that meant more to me. Having a digital practice and everything that goes into that really just helps me get to where I want to be.
There's going to come a point where the money's not going to matter as much anymore as the quality of life. Because there's very few people who are going to work 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 12 years, 15 years and go, I need more money, I need more money. No, you're already taking enough trips. You're already living in a nice enough house. You already drive a nice enough car. You're already putting enough into retirement. You don't need to be making more money. What you need to be is spending time with the people you care about, doing the things you want to be doing, getting home from work at a reasonable hour. And that's where this digital technology is going to make all the difference for you. Hello there, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Orthopreneurs podcast, Password Edition today. I just had to throw that out there because if anybody out there knows, if you know, you know, today's guest has been a guest. I technically, it's the third show you've been on, I think, right? Put your hands together and put a warm Orthopreneurs game show welcome for Bryan B. Mac Lockhart. Welcome, B. Mac.
There we go. Let's get that round of applause.
There you go. Right. I feel like, and people will understand why we're doing this in just a minute or two. But, if we were on a game show here, I'd say to you, so B-Mac, tell us a little bit about yourself. And by the way, the response you gave on the game show, you became my hero for that one. But we'll get into that in a minute. Tell everybody a little bit about what do you do, right? Obviously, where do you practice? What's your life like? And how did you end up where you are?
Yeah, sure. So I practice down in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm originally from Atlanta, Georgia. My wife, who's also an orthodontist, is how I ended up in Charlotte. And I knew I always wanted to be a dentist. Didn't know anything about ortho, didn't have braces as a kid. And when I got to right before dental school, I had someone from Case Western come down and talk in my college. And after his little spiel, he pulled a few of us to the side and he said, you know what? If you're going to go into dentistry, orthodontics is where it's at. And that's something that stood with me going into dental school. And so I kind of had aspirations about that. I didn't match the first go round. So I ended up doing a GPR for a year and then finally got accepted down in the JU, Jacksonville, and did a fellowship after that and been practicing down in Charlotte with my wife since we opened our practice in 2015.
Well, there's a new trivia question for us, right? Because this year at Orthopreneurs Summit at Sea, we're going to have some serious hardcore trivia contests because I've got myself, Chris Bonebreak Jackson, Kyle Fagala. It's going to be me, the two of them, and I think Kyle's son. I'm not sure, Charlie. I think it's going to be us versus anybody else who wants to take us on. Because all of us.
I think Kyle does like this trivia thing like hardcore. I think
he does. He is hardcore. He's all in.
Yeah,
I mean, he practices it a lot. I mean, I don't have to, but but here's your trivia question. You ready?
All right.
What do you, me, and Stuart Frost have in common? I'll tell you. None of us got accepted to ortho residency first time through.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, I didn't know that about Stu. I mean, for me, I've made it a very famous story. I applied to 55 programs and didn't get into any my first time. And so we proved them wrong, right? Right, B-Mac?
There you go.
Right on. So let's start with the game shows because, I mean, most recently, that's your kind of claim to fame recently, although there's so many other reasons we're going to talk today. Tell everybody a little bit about your game show history and briefly, what happened now and in the past.
Yeah. So the funny story. So after I finished residency, like I said, my wife and I, she had a 3-year program. My program was 2 years. So she started a year before, but we graduated the same year. And so we were in New York at the time doing our surgical fellowship. And she has an older sister who's a hygienist. She said it would be a good idea to apply to be on Family Feud. And we were thinking, okay, this is not a good idea because typically they want people to be in person to audition because they get to see you. They get to see how you perform in front of cameras and, really get a good idea because when you're sending a video, you can do 40 takes to get it right. And that might not be you on the actual video. So it's a very slim chance, but we got together around Christmas, shot a video, sent it in, and lo and behold, we got called down to Atlanta to be on the show. And so it wasn't guaranteed for us to be on. They made that very clear. And the way it works, you go and you do kind of a live sort of audition and they pick you when they feel like you're ready. So there were families that were there for 2-3 days because if you don't get on and you just go back to the hotel and you come back and try again. And luckily for us, we did our audition and we went first.
What?
And
Right
so it was
on.
like, okay, well, let's do it. But the problem with that is when you do that, you're facing the champion. And
Ah,
so it's kind of like, well, you don't want to be that person that's coming in to start the week. But that's how we luckily got on the show, and we did our thing and we
how'd you
won.
do? You won.
Yeah, we won. Yeah, we did the whole thing. We won, and then we got the fast money. My brother-in-law and I we did the fast money. And I like to say that I carried us a little bit because I think he had like 70 points to get. But he was getting like the first and second choices as well. And so I think we got to maybe like the fourth one before the end, and we had already gotten the total number of points, and
Right
we
on.
won the 20K.
That's awesome. And now recently, you were on another game show.
Yeah. So funny story. So so my wife, she and her twin sisters, they're all into social media and that kind of thing. Like that's the world that they live in. And there's this other show. I can't even remember the name of it. I actually think they stopped shooting for it. But anyway, they wanted to do these profiles to apply to be on that show. And they're telling me the last minute, and I'm like, well, I'm not filling out the application. And Lauren's like, okay, well, I'll do it for you. And she's like, well, shoot this video. I was like, I don't really want to do this video. I haven't even shaved yet. I don't, all this stuff being kind of like I just don't want to do it. So I finally did it. And out of the four of us,
I don't want to
was the
do
one
it.
that got called back.
I just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
But I finally did it.
And then I was like, I'll do it. And I was like, but I really don't care. And I was the one that luckily got called back. And I did a few Zoom auditions. It was like 50 of them. And I'm not even joking. Like it was a ton of them.
50 Zoom auditions?
Well, it wasn't 50. I was exaggerating a little bit. But it was a lot of it. And the problem is we were supposed to shoot in July of 2023, but then the writers or someone in Hollywood went on strike. And I don't know if you remember that. And so they stopped production all the way down until I think the end of September. And so I had done all these auditions, and then they were like, we'll get back to you. And then nothing happened, and they come back, and we ended up flying out to LA, and the rest is history.
Right on. Here's another fun trivia contest question. So here's something you and I have in common. When I was in residency, I was living in Florida, just like you, right? And by the way, some of my favorite docs on the world came out of JU, just for what it's worth. We don't have to name. We could name 20 right off the top of our head. Everybody knows. But I was in Florida at Nova. I was married, obviously, 3 kids, and older resident. And I was sitting on the couch. And one of the things I always have to have sound on behind me when I'm working. I can't work in a quiet room. I need TV on or music or something. And Who Wants to Be a Millionaire was on. And my family will never play trivia with me anymore. They just won't do it. It's something that just doesn't happen anymore. And I was sitting watching Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, working on my computer, doing my master's thesis at the time. And I remember turning to my wife and go, I wonder how you get on the show. I'm not exaggerating. Literally a second later, the guy goes, would you like to be on the show? I was like, what? He's like, and this is like God talking to me at this point. Because he says, tomorrow we'll be at, right? And then there's like pause and they like insert where they'll be the next day. Mm-hmm. And they were going to be like 4 miles from my house the very next day. So I told my wife, hey, I'm going to go home. On my way home, I'm going to leave school. And on my way home, I'm going to go to these auditions. And there were like 5,000 people at this racetrack, all trying to become millionaires. And I'm just going to tell you, B-Mac, from the looks of it, most were not becoming millionaires. Right. But from that entire group, they only chose one person, and it was me. I got like 28 of the 30 questions right. It's timed. It's really interesting. You have to be on camera. They interview you. And they said to me, we're going to put your name into a hopper, and you're going to be called to be on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire within 3 years. If not, we put it back in, we re-roll it, and you will get on the show at some point. Right. Well, I moved out of Florida after my residency to Texas. My forward ends at some point, and that was the end of that. So I never became a millionaire, but it's a hell of a story.
Listen, now you were that close. I mean, the thing is, that's a real show, though. Like that and Jeopardy, things that you really have to think about. Like I wouldn't do good at those games. I need the games where you could be 6 or you could be 95, and you still have the equal shot at winning.
Wheel of Fortune.
That's what I need.
Yeah, big money. Well, cool. That's awesome. And so one of the things that you're also known for is digital practice, right? Talking about speaking for Lightforce. And I don't know if you speak for anybody else, but really you're an advocate for the concept of the modern digital practice, right? And again, I'm proud to say that I asked and you said you would. You'll be talking at Summit 2025 in Caesars Palace in Vegas, which I'm really excited about. But right, you love talking about the modern digital practice, right?
Yeah. So, for me, and this is something that I always, or, try to say before I give any sort of lecture or presentation, to make it clear is that I'm not saying the way I practice is the best way to practice or that is better than another way of practicing, right? Because we all know there are some offices that still have paper charts, that have traditional brackets that are killing it. We know practices that are all aligners that are killing it, practices that are fully digital that are killing it. So no matter what sort of format you have, you can be successful if you do it the right way. So I just want to be clear about that. Now, for me, it's more about, okay, how do I maintain that financial aspect, but then also practice how I want to practice? And for me, digital treatment and appliances allow me to practice how I want to practice. And that's the way I like to phrase it. And it's like, for me, I want to have a lifestyle where I don't want to work every day. I want to have a lifestyle where I don't see a ton of patients every day. And again, it's not a matter of better or worse. It's just that's for me what works for me. And digital appliances and digital modalities allow me to do that. And that is the reason that I'm so invested into it, because I had a vision right when we opened our practice of what I wanted out of my practice. And everything that we've done up until this point has been moving us in that direction. And luckily for me, I picked the right time, because now is the busiest time in terms of innovation and whatnot. So it's sort of like divine intervention that, the profession is sort of moving in this direction right at the time that I'm kind of entering into it. So.
That's beautiful. And, there's two things I want to just bring up now that you brought those things up. Number one, kudos to you for saying what you said ahead. Hey, this is how I do it. This isn't necessarily the right way for you, but it's the right way for me, right? Because all too often, especially on social media, behind keyboard courage, people want to attack each other. Man, I could tell you how I pay my salaries. I could tell you how I do my 401k. You're not going to argue with me at all. If I talk about a class 2 corrector that you don't like, oh my gosh, it's like it's like you insulted their mother or something. And I don't quite understand it. So I just want to, just like kudos, man, for saying, look, you don't have to do it this way. I'm just telling you, this was what works for me. And you find your own path. But I'll augment that by saying, all too often, people don't do their homework to learn what it is you're doing.
So that's the biggest thing. And sorry to cut you off, but I mean, I think that's a big point right there. So there's two things that typically happens, right? And this is something where, I've kind of dialed back a little bit on the social media groups, because I realize kind of how this cycle repeats itself. But I love it. I mean, I learned a ton. So, I mean, it's not a bad thing, but it's just a cycle that tends to happen. There's usually two things that typically happens. There's one where there is information that is put out, and there's a piece of the information that someone doesn't like or disagrees with, and they disregard everything else, and they hang on to the part that they disagree with, which is fine. Everyone has their own, opinion, whatever. But to just pick out one specific part of an entire topic or situation and only focus on that is just disingenuous. And then the second part of that is anything that is remotely similar to it gets put into that bag and disregarded the same way. And that goes back into doing I don't even call it research, but just sort of just educating yourself on the subject matter. And what I always tell people is too, like, listen, you can hear something and understand everything that I'm saying and disagree with it, or not even disagree, but just, it's okay, I hear you, but that's just not for me.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely fine. But when you don't know what it is and you make these assumptions and you clump it from something that you think is similar and you don't even know anything about it, and all of a sudden you have this strong opinion about it, that's when it becomes problematic, because we don't get anywhere, because we can't have a conversation about it because you have not done anything to edify yourself on it. I mean, there's webinars, there's things that are in your local area, all of it's free. Like, there's no reason for you not to have access to the information. You just choose not to. And again, if you educate yourself on the subject and you're like, look, I understand everything that you're saying, that's just not me, kudos all day. I get it. Right. But a lot of times it's like, listen, I think it's this, so this is my opinion. And then you're going down a path that is not even relevant to what we're trying to talk about.
Yeah. As somebody who collates, right, you're able to step away from social media. I can't. Right. And so but I have hundreds and hundreds of conversations with orthodontists, and I never cease to be amazed about the fact that such educated, smart people can be so incredibly ignorant when they want to be, or not educated when they want to be. And I'll give you an example. And that's why I gave you kudos for what you said. I've been well known for talking about OSOs and DSOs and all those things. You can go back and look at every single thing I've ever talked about and anything I've ever posted. I've never pressured anybody. I've never told anybody you should join one. I just tell all the reasons why I joined and all the benefits from a financial perspective. I've done a deep dive on this subject for literally 3 years now. And I would argue that there are very few orthodontists that will go toe to toe with me and we can talk facts and they really understand it as well. But I did a post a couple of weeks ago about money, and part of it is a little bit manipulative, where I do it to sort of get a rise out of people, right? I say, and people just take the bait, right? You just put it out there, and the angry, nasty, mean people become angry, nasty, mean people, right? They take the bait and they run with it. But at the end of the day, every person I've ever met with on the phone or a Zoom meeting, kind of like this, they'll tell you, I don't ever try to talk anybody into anything. I just want to educate. I want my peers so badly, like you. What we're saying here together is we want you so badly to be educated so that whatever the right decision for you is, you never look back and go, I wish I'd known. I wish I'd known this. I wish I'd known that. Because if you just close your mind to it, you're going to make a mistake somewhere along the line. But if you
Yeah.
get educated, nobody can blame you for saying, I hate herbs. Well, why do you hate herbs? I hate cemented appliances. Well, that's a stupid answer, right? But if you said, I hate herbs, why do I hate herbs? Well, because of X, Y, Z. I don't like this. I don't like. Cool, I get it. You're educated. You're making a good decision.
Yeah, so that happened to me too, and this is why I changed my sort of thinking on that, because one of the things that, I'm not too ashamed to admit when I'm wrong about something, but it was dental monitoring, right? When we'll just say remote monitoring, right? When it came
You can
out,
say
or when it
dental
really,
monitoring. I say it all the time.
yeah, when it really became a thing, it's like, oh well, we're getting better outcomes, and it'll help you, treat cases more efficiently, and I'm thinking, this is the dumbest thing ever. It doesn't affect the biology. It's not something that is going into the mouth. Like it's not applying any forces on the teeth. How is this helping me, get better outcomes? How does this help me be more efficient? And so for the longest time, I'm like, there's no place in it for me. And so I finally decided to listen to, a webinar. I can't remember who was giving it at the time. And it was about, catching things when they get off track earlier, so you don't go down this rabbit hole for 3 or 4 months with nothing happening. You actually catch it when you catch it. That's the efficiency part. And the other part of it is the accountability that the patients have in terms of being compliant. All of these things go into helping us treat the patients better and treating them more efficiently. And had I not actually invested some time to actually hear out the process, because again, the way my mind thinks, I'm very tactile and I'm surface level, and it has to make sense to me from the beginning before I can even consider it. And this was something that didn't really make a lot of sense for me until I educated myself. And then the same thing when I talk about custom braces, the same thing. And I hear people say, well, the biology is what it is. If the canine is impacted, that canine is going to take X amount of time to get in. Like, you can't do that. And they're absolutely right. But then I tell them, but it's everything outside of that. So if you have one thing that's constant, and that's the rate that you can move it to, but you
Right.
control all the other variables around it, you are still going to treat that case out more efficiently than you would with some of these other appliances. And this is not a debate to say what's better, what's not. But again, it's one of those things where if you are just thinking about it from a perspective of, this is just another bracket and it's not going to move the tooth faster, so there's no room for it in our profession, then it's a little off. And like I said, it's not that, I think of custom, fixed appliances as something that are moving teeth faster, but it controls a lot of other things that I don't have control over that eventually will allow me to do what I need to do. So the point I'm trying to make is educate yourself. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that are out there that have educated themselves and decided, that's not for them, and that's fine. But at least, you owe yourself the few minutes or hours that that it'll take to listen to a webinar, or go to a conference, and just hear the details for yourself.
I agree 100%. I'm a big DM user. I love it. I didn't buy into it originally, but the interesting thing about DM, specifically DM, because I take it you're a user, right, of DM? Yeah. The big thing that's real interesting about it is if I were to go on Orthopreneurs right now and said, what are your top stressors? What are the number one stressors in your life? The number one right now for everybody is staff, team, no question, right? I can't find an adequate team. My team's not working well enough. I'm taking people out of positions to do other stuff. And stress levels, right? In my RD group, we asked people last year, raise your hands if you want to make more money and raise your hand if you want to have less stress. You can only have one or the other. In the room, all hands except 3 said less stress. 3 with younger practices wanted more money, understandably. And so if I asked those questions and said, but now here's a possible solution to help you with your staffing and to reduce your stress. It'll cost too much money. Oh, now money matters. It didn't matter before, right? Stress was number 1. Money was number 2. There might be some difference of, a little bit of money. But in my practice, we're all DM now. And I'm doing the same amount of production today as I did 2 years ago with 4 clinical team members as opposed to 7 2 years ago. My days are lighter. I get home faster. We all go home happier. And it's not always Shangri-La,
Right.
but people look at it, just like you said, at a very surface. And I have no financial interest money-wise. I have no investment whatsoever in DM. Full disclosure, I did start a company called Remote Response, which basically took it to the next level where the biggest challenge most offices have is they take their best team member, clinical, and put them on the dashboard because you're not going to trust the moron. So what now happens? Now your best monitor is sitting in front of a computer when they should be marketing, leadership, what have you. So I said, you know what? Hand over your dashboard to me. Let me get monitors who will do it for you through your dashboard. So now you took your X and add Y and you get Z, which is way, way better. But in that interest, people don't want to hear it. No, we're doing fine. Are you? Are you really doing fine? Your best team member is tied up on a computer and you're short-staffed. And so my point in all of this is exactly what you said is people listen to the narrative, listen to what it is you really want. And sometimes something that seems like it might be a bad fit is actually going to get you much closer to happiness. Yeah. Because if it's all about money, 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 we can come up, you and me, BMAC, we can come up with 50 ways people will make more money tomorrow.
Yeah.
But they're going to be working more. They're going to be working like, I'm just going to do a call out right now because I love him to death and you love him to death. I have no doubt. Chris Feldman. Oh. I love Chris Feldman, right? JU graduate, just turned 40. Happy birthday, Chris. I'm going to give you some love out there.
His birthday is actually the same day as my son. So unfortunately, I have to remember his birthday for the rest of my life, which pains me. But yeah, happy late birthday. It
does not pain you. Chris Feldman, for those who don't know it, is one of my favorite people on the planet. That's a guy, if he's your friend and you call him at 4 a.m. and say, I need you to come here with duct tape and a shovel and plastic bags. He is in the car on his way over there. There's not a more authentic human being in orthodontics than Chris Feldman. And he has spoken on the stage at Orthopreneurs, and I love the guy to death. But you'll hear Chris, I'll never do aligners. I'll never do dental. I'll never, right? And again, it works for him. He knows what he wants. He knows what he doesn't want, but he'll never, ever, ever become an aligner practice. Even if it means less work, he's not going to do it because that's just the way he's built.
So he's one of the ones that made me have to change my thought process on that because
he does that to you.
We were getting, I think it was about Light Force, I believe. I can't remember, something digital, right? And I don't want to paint him as the anti-digital person, but I mean,
but he is. He
said this, vocally. But it's like I found myself almost like in a situation where I'm trying to convince him to do something, and I'm like, listen, I'm not. If you don't want to do that, we're happy because it's a group chat. It's a JU group chat that we have, and so there's other orthodontists in the group, and we're talking about it, and we're going back and forth. And this goes back to residency. I mean, we because we're in the same class, and I won't say argue, but we debated a lot.
If you know Chris, if you've been friends with Chris, you have argued.
Yeah. So we've gone back and forth a lot. And that went on in our little group chat. And that's when I realized, I was like, listen, hey, if you are killing it, you are doing fine. You like the way you're practicing. That's fine. And ever since our little debate that we had, that's when I ultimately changed my whole focus on how I approach, this kind of thing when I'm out lecturing or talking to someone. Because it is like no one wants to feel like, you're telling them that what they're doing is not right and that, you're doing something better than them, especially when they're doing great. And so that's what made me change my whole perspective on that subject.
Yeah. And he's done the same thing to me many times. He's a very stubborn guy, but with good reason. And
Mhm.
the good news about having a friend like him in your life, and I hope everybody out there has a Chris Feldman in their life, because when you think you're absolutely right, he's going to give you reasons to think maybe you're not. He might
Yeah.
be right. He might be wrong. But here's a guy, I've been to his practice. I've been to New Iberia, Louisiana. I
Yeah.
visited with him, right? Great practice. Here's a guy who's doing a low overhead practice, doing great ortho, who is as focused on doing good ortho as anybody on the planet, and
Yeah.
he's doing it his way, and he's
Right.
happy. And you know what? He lives a great life. And I'll tell you, what do I need to bring in aligners? What do I need to bring in digital brackets for? What do I need remote monitoring for? I'm really happy the way I am. The only difference is he's authentic about it. And I'd say out of 100 doctors who say that, he's the only one I would say, yeah, Chris, I get it 100%. You should. Of the other 99, there's a significant portion who don't really understand the impact on their life. They don't understand the benefits. They're just digging their heels in and saying no. So with the time we have left, can you, right now, you've got one digital product you can't live without. One. All right. I'm putting you on a desert island. I'm opening a brand new ortho practice in the middle of this gorgeous desert island. You're going to have doors that open up right to the beach. You're going to work in shorts and flip flops. It's going to be amazing, BMAC. And so my question for you is, you're going to have a regular ortho practice, but there's one piece of digital equipment. It's the only piece of digital that you can bring with you. What's that one thing that's
Yeah.
indispensable in your life?
So it would have to be Light Force, and I love my CVCT, which is giving it a close second.
I
And
wasn't even
it's
thinking
standard
about
as
that,
well.
but yeah.
But the thing is, for me, my practice is still like 78% fixed appliances. So it represents the large amount of appliances that I use on a day to day basis. And not a lot of people know this, but I've spoken about it before. But right after COVID, I had a mass exodus of assistants. It was around the time where everyone was getting these crazy pay raises, and everybody didn't know what was going on, and everyone could get it because it was a mess, and people just needed people. And I had 5 assistants, come to me and say, "Hey, we want higher pay. We want lunch every day. We want this." Literally had a list of demands, so to speak.
A
And
union.
yeah, seriously. And they said, "Or we're gonna, leave." And so I talked with Lauren, and we decided to let them go. So we lost 5 clinical assistants literally at the same time. And
Wow.
so we, fortunately for us, we, had a new dental school that was, graduating a new fresh batch of new bright assistants who didn't know anything about ortho. But being in this digital world, the learning curve of what we had to teach them was so different than the way we had to do it in years before. And so for me, that was when, and you hate to go through a crisis to really understand the value of why you're doing something, but sometimes you need to do that so you can really understand, what it is. And for me, what I've learned when we hire new assistants in our office is so much easier for us to teach them, which seems ironic, to do Light Force than to teach them the regular way. Because with the traditional brackets, sometimes they have the right side and the left side mixed up. Because something about looking at that graph of the right is on the left and the left is on the right, and they put it in the bracket instead of the hook being gingival facing distal, it's mesial, and all these little things that can go wrong versus just, hey, just put this little thing right in this section, shine a light, take it off, do the back. And so for me, and for what I want to do and how I want to practice, I need a custom bracket that can give me the efficiency that I need, because I think the most important thing, and I don't think a lot of us think about it this way, is getting braces off. Like that's how you make money in our profession. And for me, that is what I am so focused on. Like starting cases, obviously we need that. But if you're starting a bunch of cases, but you're not finishing them on time, that profit you start to lose it. And so
Yep.
that is the number one thing that helps me get to the finish line so much easier, so much faster. And so I don't think I could go back. I mean, we still do, some metal brackets here and there, and it's torture. But for me
Being an
personally,
orthodontist sucks, huh?
I know, right? Look at me on this high horse. But no, but a custom bracket and the whole system all packaged together is something that I don't think I can go back to or go back
Yeah.
from.
And by the way, you just said something. Here's another commonality. You just gave me the same exact advice that Vince Kokich, may he rest in peace, gave me right before I went back to ortho. I was a GP, and I was living in Seattle. And before I went back to residency, I met with Vince Kokich one of the last days I was in Seattle before I went to Florida. I met him in his University of Washington offices, and I said, Vince, If you're going to give me any advice, what are you going to give me? And he sort of recounted a talk he'd given to residents or GORP somewhere about four things. And I've talked about a few of them. The one thing he said is exactly what you just said right now, which is worth repeating. He said, when you first start out in practice, you're going to be starting all these cases. And he says, think of it like a funnel, right? It's an upside down funnel. All the cases are going in, but none are coming out. And he says, and then you become a little more mature. So now some cases are coming out the end, but more and more are going in. And then eventually you hit maturity, and what you want is a cylinder. You want a cylinder where the amount coming in every month is the amount going out at the end every month. It doesn't have to be more coming out, right? And then as you start getting later in practice, it does become more going out than are going in. And then your practice, if you've ridden your dinosaur into extinction, that's what ends up happening, right?
No, that's good. So the funny thing is I actually do a part of this in my lecture where I show like starting cases and how your active patient load is getting higher and higher. And until you start offloading those patients, you're adding extra columns, you're adding extra assistants, you're adding on more days, you're seeing more patients a day. And it's until you can really control, and I don't think you can ever get to a point to where you're debonding more than you're starting. I mean, it's possible, but on average, you're going to start a lot more. Right. But if you can keep them reasonably close, that's the sweet spot, because that's when you have the flexibility to do what you want to do and practice how you want to practice and take off when you want to take off and, shuffle patients around when you want. I mean, think about trying to shuffle, you last minute figure out you need to step away for a day or two and you're seeing 120 patients a day, right? I mean, that's a lot of patients. And then where are you going to put them? Like, that is a disaster. And so we're so nimble. We don't have that many patients that we need to shuffle around. There's open spots to do it. And so just the flexibility to do, what I want to do and practice how I want to practice is just everything to me. Like, that's what's important. And like I said, I do care about, the finances, because I have a family that I need to support, and I have, things that I like, obviously. But ultimately, you get up to a certain level where financially it just doesn't do it for you anymore. And for me, it was the peace of mind that meant more to me. And like I said, having a modern, I won't call it modern, but a digital practice and everything that goes into that really just helps me, get to where I want to be.
It's a great point. And again, it just illustrates the fact of, what I've been saying for years is that every person listening to this who's an orthodontist is going to do just fine financially. Everybody. Like in today's day and age, if you're a young orthodontist listening to us right now, okay, just know you're going to be fine. I remember listening to, I tell the story all the time. Me and my partner, Doug, we were residents at Nova listening to Stu Frost and John Graham share the stage at the Damon Forum. I think it was Orlando. And when it was all done, we were like starstruck, went up to Dr. Frost at the time and, hey, Dr. Frost. And he started sharing numbers about his practice. And he was telling us how much he was making as a gross. He was very transparent. And we looked at each other like, oh my God. And let's just say the number was $2 million, right? Which is by no stretch of imagination a monster practice in today's day and age. And he was working 3 days a week, doing $2 million a year, 50%. Like, that's crazy. So my point in all of this, folks, if there's one takeaway message you're going to get from BMAC today, if there's one takeaway message you're going to get from him at next year's Orthopreneurs Summit, which I'm telling you, I cannot wait to sit in your presentation, it's this: you're going to do fine financially, right? That's what you're talking about. No matter what you do, you're going to hit a point in your career where you are making enough money to support your family and all the other fun stuff you want to do along with it. If you're not, reach out to me and we can talk. I can help walk you through some steps and ways to help you, just to help you along, because it's something all of us can achieve. And I've done it with many of you, just as a friend thing. But there's going to come a point where the money's not going to matter as much anymore as the quality of life, right? Thinking about the funnel changes, the money equation changes, because there's very few people who are going to work 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 12 years, 15 years and go, I need more money. I need more money. No, you're already taking enough trips. You're already living in a nice enough house. You already drive a nice enough car. You're already putting enough into retirement. You don't need to be making more money. What you need to be is spending time with the people you care about, doing the things you want to be doing, and getting home from work at a reasonable hour. And that's where this digital technology is going to make all the difference for you. If I said to you right now, whoever you are out there, take what he just told you about why he does what he does. And I want you to have a CBCT. I want you to have good digital PMS software. I want you to have DM. I want you to use dental monitoring in your practice. I even want you to throw in remote response into this thing, right? And you're doing Light Force and you're doing Align or Spark, whatever you're using. All right. Your first thought, if you're a younger orthodontist, is, oh my God, it's going to cost me so much money. If you're an existing orthodontist who's been doing it for 20 years, oh my God, my overhead's going to go through the ceiling. Let's assume your overhead goes up 7%, giving a huge number. Are you still making enough money? But now your life has just become immeasurably easier. Would you agree with me on this, BMAC?
I do. I agree wholeheartedly. And I mean, I echo that to the T. And, you said it. It's something we've been talking about the whole time. It's the way of life. And that is what matters. And my wife, she practices with me. And we had a tough discussion because she wanted to cut down to one day. She only wanted to work one day because she wanted to be with her kids or with our kids. That sounded bad.
That sounded really, I was like, wow, you guys have an open relationship.
Your
wife has her own kids. You got your own kids.
Yeah,
wow.
Listen, that sounded bad.
That is living the digital life right there.
Listen, she's already mad at me from what I said on Password too. But she wanted to do that. And so I respected that. And, that meant more to her than not. And so I said, you know what? If that's what you want to do, that's fine. And again, that's something that we can do where we had the flexibility to make it work. And then the other thing is, and I don't want to take up too much time because I know we're getting on a time crunch here, is what I want people to understand. And these are conversations that I have a lot, and people always get stumped on this. But I say, the first question I ask is, okay, if you take right now in 2024, do you think is orthodontics, are the results that we're getting now in 2024 better than we were getting in 1950? And people always say, well, yeah, I think so. Yeah. And I'm like, okay. And I said, do you think we are treating patients more efficiently in 2024 than we were in 1950? And they say, yeah. And I say, okay, well, you have to understand, and this is not even including all of the digital stuff that has come out in the last 5 years. This is just, pre-adjusted, brackets, getting bands off of teeth, getting digital photography, like all of this stuff that predates a lot of the digital stuff that's coming along now. And I say, well, at one point, this same information was being brought to the profession, and I guarantee people were saying, listen, I can just bend the torque in each individual bracket. I can just band every tooth. Why do I need to put some glue on that's going to, make the bracket come off and all this kind of stuff? And so I understand the apprehension sometimes when it comes to something new. But when you take a step back and look at, well, the profession has definitely changed since its inception. And if you just blindly take it, I know this is an overgeneralization, but if you look at the progression that the profession has made and compare it to how things were done back when it started, you can't argue that things are better now. Like it just is. And, where someone draws the line into how digital they want to be, that's up to them. But we have to appreciate and understand that, things that are pushing our profession forward is something that we have to receive and accept and take in what we want to at our own pace, but understand that we need the change that's coming, and it's only going to make us better. And so that's my little, high horse thing that I want to get out there, because that's just how I feel.
Just preach. It's true. And I'll finish it with this. What you're describing right now, BMAC, is the technology adoption curve. The stuff that everybody looks at right now and says, there's a large number of people like you and me who adopt this stuff. Right? Not a lot, but you have your pioneers, your early adopters, right? And the main body of people are going to start adopting it more as prices come down, or maybe staffing shortages. When the economy is really booming, the staffing problems we have now are going to get way worse, right? Way worse, because right now people are still trying to find jobs here and there. Right. But I would argue or contend, I don't want to argue, I would contend that in 20 years, the stuff that we're talking about right now as being crazy people, it's going to be every day. Yeah. This is just the way it's going to be. And so I agree with everything you said. I can't thank you enough for being on here today, man. I can't wait to see you at Caesars next year at Orthopreneurs. We're just going to have a great time. And I just can't wait to hear what you talk about, because everything you said today was gold. And so thank you so much. The password is gold.
I love it. Thanks for having me. I am looking forward to the summit. It is going to be a lot of fun, and as they always are. And, I had fun today.
Well, appreciate it. Likewise. As much fun as you had, I had twice as much. So, and we even had a Chris Feldman shout out, which that just makes the day perfect there. So,
and I spared him, because I usually, any chance I get, I like to fire him up because I know he can't respond. But I didn't do it this time. So Chris, just be thankful. Okay.
Yeah. Who's your football team, BMAC?
You see, that's another thing. So I'm Falcons and he's Saints. And so
I know, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
Here's your chance before you sign off. Give him
Oh
a
man,
call.
the Saints stink. He'll know what that means.
Oh, he knows what that means.
That's
Anyway,
exactly what that means.
appreciate you so much, and just wishing you a great day, man.
Absolutely. Same to you.